loan program of $5,000 per graduate to stay in Vermont for 2 years after graduation, and any other UVM touched program here with our workforce.
Sure.
So I understand VSAC's going to administer this, but if you could just talk to us about how this evolved and
Yep.
and how many people you expect to serve, and sort of tee it up for us.
Tee it up. Okay, sounds good. So again, thanks, senators, for the time and attention to this. As Senator Clarkson mentioned, this is for section 1A1 of H703, right up front. So
Yeah,
it's the first line item. So this is for $2.5 million to administer $5,000 per graduate of recent college graduates to work in Vermont. My understanding, it would be for a 2 to 3 year minimum time span. It would be a joint operation between the University of Vermont and VSAC. We have had contact with VSAC around this, and we're very eager to collaborate with them. As you know, the Office of Engagement was established with support from the state the summer of 2020. Since that time, we have been conducting outreach across all corners of the state. Jobs attraction and retention of students is a top priority of us, and continues to be, not only from our land grant mission, but also the fact that we attract many students from out of state who fall in love with the state and would love to stay here and work. And I should also note that many of them already have housing here. So we all know about the housing crunch for our workforce. So there's a nice fit there as well. We have over 11,000 students graduating from Vermont institutions every year. And that breakdown includes 1,500 or so with 2-year degrees, 7,000 or so with 4-year degrees, for about 4,500 with graduate degrees. Of those, UVM graduates annually around 3,100.
UVM graduates 3,100 sort of aggregate of 4-year and graduate.
That's right. That's right. Combination of both. And it's my understanding and appreciation that this program would be beneficial to all Vermont graduates, not just UVM. I want to be very clear that we're very interested in supporting programming that benefits the state and not narrowly tailored to just UVM grads. So,
and it includes 2-year and 4-year degrees.
I believe, in talking with the sponsors, Senator Representative Jerome, about this, I believe that's the spirit of the intent behind that effort. And as well as being available to recent graduates who want to settle and work here in Vermont. So they may also be graduating from institutions outside of our state. And again, we can refine that vision, but our ideal is to reach as many students as possible. So there is that. We understand in terms of division of labor with VSAC, if it's a forgivable loan program, obviously they have the capacity and background in managing the financial system aspects of that. What UVM would be playing the role of is in marketing this opportunity.
Yeah, I was going to say, who's going to market it? That's where you come in.
That's where we come in. We would market the opportunity. We would work with VSAC on the verification processes to determine eligibility. Obviously, there's some tracking of this. We don't want recent grads to just take advantage of this and fly the coop where their obligations are done.
Chris, that's a big question I had is
Sure.
who's doing the longitudinal tracking of this? Because it's going to require time and energy and data capacity.
It certainly will. I mean, there is definitely, as any program, new programs of this design will require some administrative support. We recognize that there may be an administrative percentage of of 8 to 10% or so of the investment that should be able to cover the system. And I think we can work between VSAC and UVM to distribute those resources to make sure we have the administrative support. So from marketing, logistics, and as well as the financial resource side of this, financial management side.
So this is the most broad and vague one paragraph with quite a bit of money. I mean, it doesn't have, if students don't fulfill their commitment, there's no requirement for them to pay it back. I mean, are you expecting, it doesn't even say here that you're expecting to come up with a whole program outline to come back to us and update us on.
Right. That would be.
It basically leaves it just to you and VSAC without any further check-in and update to us at all, or how do we get money back if people leave and all that kind of stuff.
Right,
so what is your thought on that, and how could we tighten that up a bit here, just so that we have some degree of comfort that there'll be MOU or something that sets all that out? Absolutely.
We would more than welcome that. We would expect and encourage the tightening of some of this language. And if it would be helpful for the committee for us to confer with VSAC and come back to you.
I think that, given our time frame, Chris, that would be great.
All right.
Because we need to do that with you, Marilyn, and David Hall. So I think we would want language that gave us some comfort that UVM and VSAC were going to develop the program, set parameters, set ways we get money back, and identify how we're going to track students over time so that we can both get them to fulfill their obligation and so that we know who's benefited, how many,
exactly,
to what degree, and actually keep tabs with them. Because quite honestly, I'd hope they'd stay, that we're establishing a life pattern and that they would stay, period.
Right.
There clearly also has to be a dating service so that everybody can get connected and stay here.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I understand that all of the money is going to students. There's nothing that has it set aside for 5% goes to administering the fund. It sounds like the administration exists to plug this in so that it's all going to students.
Well, marketing. There'll be some marketing.
I would, Senator Ram Hinsdale, I would expect that we would need to provide, there would need to be some provisions for some overhead. Our understanding and appreciation would be of the $2.5 million that there would be some administrative funds that would be taken from that amount in order to provide for the management of this. I can't speak for VSAC's capacity to administer this, given some of their internal mechanisms, but I'm certainly happy to get back to you with VSAC as one voice on that very issue. But I can speak from UVM's perspective. This is a new program. It's going to take bandwidth to get it up and running. And I think to do a proper job for accounting wise, it would need at least some portion of FTE of a person that we have not budgeted for and anticipated. It's not to suggest that we couldn't leverage some existing resources to sweeten that, but
so to follow up on that, Chris, I guess I have a question, which is why can't we just do this right now with VSAC doing the loan forgiveness and having ACCD, which already has a Think Vermont marketing program, having them market this to the graduates coming out. They're already doing this, we're already paying for that marketing.
Right.
Can you sell us on why UVM needs to be a part of this?
Yeah, my argument would be that as an educational institution that's most familiar with this market, we know what's compelling for them. We have our career services working with them every day on developing their resumes and their job prospects. We'd like to see this folded into and be supportive of a statewide internship platform that we're hoping can finally get off the ground in collaboration with the state. So the pathway here would be to also be marketing these to interns who are interning in Vermont organizations. It's also, I think, a value of us to be outreaching to employers in our travels across the state over the last several months. As we got word that this could be an opportunity, I started asking potential employers of particular size, would they be interested in participating in such a program? I'm sure you're hearing from employers who are giving bonuses for new employees and whatnot. So it would help to leverage our connections with employers as well to have the marketing of this opportunity there. So it helps to amplify, I would say, the higher education to employer pathways more smoothly than just sort of a straight up marketing campaign would be. So I would argue that we have access and we have knowledge of the particular demographics of this particular.
And you work with all the other career counselors in all the other colleges and graduate schools.
And this would actually honestly be an impetus and a great reason to officially make those ties a little bit more salient. They all have great career counseling offices. We've had Middlebury testify over this bill, and they were incredibly impressive. They are. They truly are. And I know that our career center professionals do network. Under the rubric of a program like this, there is now sort of an official role that they would be playing in marketing these opportunities to their students. In talking with colleagues, in connecting around just sharing best practices is great, but to anchor these relationships in some real resources and programming as this program would do, would provide some teeth and I think some deepening rationale for engaging with each other on a regular basis to ensure the success of the program across the board.
Question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess that I have two questions that leads to. Number one, Chris, I'm part of full disclosure, have been part of watching that the Office of Engagement get off the ground. Do you have numbers around how many students you're currently serving outside of University of Vermont, graduates or students? Is there a percentage? Is this a goal that would be met through this solely? I mean, how do we measure your ability to get outside of UVM to help other students? And two, I mean, I think what we all can appreciate is that students need to look at their financial aid package before they commit to an institution. We're trying to ask young people to say, yes, I'm going to choose this institution in Vermont. And I also know that $5,000 is debt I won't have to pay if I stay in Vermont for at least a couple years.
You mean market this at the beginning as well as at the end?
You can't do this at the end. That doesn't help anybody. That doesn't help low income people. That doesn't help people choose Vermont.
I don't think that's fair. I think it would help people if they knew about this in their junior year as they start planning what's next. I mean, as long as people know about it, as they start planning.
We know that forgivable loans, period, don't reduce the stress of lower income people who are taking on a huge amount of debt. Right. So again, if you're not giving someone a grant, if you're saying it's a forgivable loan, you're already cutting out certain folks who look at their overall financial picture, don't have a safety net, don't have parental wealth to help them. And you're already asking them to make a big leap. But introducing this in someone's senior year, I don't think helps the people that we want to help choose.
You're looking for a grant as opposed to a forgivable loan then?
I mean, a grant and a forgivable loan, I guess, are the same thing if you're looking at, okay, you have to stay for 2 years and then you get this grant.
But in the event a loan is a lot harder a grant is a lot harder to claw back.
Yeah. I don't think.
I'm
you do
not
it as a
saying,
grant.
I'm not necessarily saying a grant, but I'm wondering how you make sure students know about this when they sign up for college. Because many students will not sign up for college if they, $5,000 can make the difference for somebody. So unless they know, oh, this is gonna be a grant later if I stay, you know, they don't have 3 years where they're thinking about that as a possibility necessarily.
So I agree, I think smart colleges will use this, but this is not for educational loans. This can be a loan for anything. This is a loan, this could be any loan. This could be,
Everything from childcare
yes,
to.
this could be childcare, a house, this could be, this is specifically not an educational loan, is my understanding from VSAC when we had them testify.
Doesn't say anything about
It's not an educational loan. So
So,
it's,
okay, so let me understand this. They get $5,000 when they graduate.
no, they get it when they are here for 2 years, they get it at the end of their, I would assume.
Then what's the forgivable loan?
Chris, do you have an answer on this?
Yeah, so I would say the parallels for this would be in the Vista AmeriCorps program,
Right.
right? Where the folks give 2 years of service, and at the conclusion of their service, they get, 2,500, it could be more, it's probably more than that now, for loan deferment. And that does go back to their college loans.
Those are
That's
educational.
a grant that, this doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry.
You're right.
A loan after
You're
2
right.
years.
Yeah.
This makes sense.
Yeah, so I would be happy to go back to VSAC and get this clarified. So, I'm not a banking expert and I'm not an expert in this particular
Yeah, I
policy.
think those are some of our questions that we need to iron out. And
sure.
I think we need to, I think these are some of the questions we have with this.
Yep.
How many students graduate in the state of Vermont
He said
each year?
11.
Each year, 11,000, this past year, it was 11,166.
Is there a comparable program? Because I read this as being, you get $5,000 after graduation if you. to
Yeah,
service
I
and
would,
pay.
Senator, I would not recommend that we design a program that would give them the funding prior to their 2 years of service, of employment.
So we can fix that. My concern is there any other program like this in Vermont that you're aware of?
There are no programs that I'm aware of in Vermont. There are programs like this in other states. Our background research identified Kansas, New Hampshire, Alabama, in the very least, have similar programs, and they're structured differently in those different states, but they're all experimenting and utilizing. Some of these have been around for actually quite a while. The Kansas program has been around for quite a while. So yes, there is precedence for these kind of programs across the country.
Well, and the Vista AmeriCorps.
And the
Just-
Vista.
I'm wondering at what level the other states fund this, because my math shows that this would only cover 500 loans.
Right.
Yeah, somebody said they hoped it would be about 1,000 students, but if you're also taking administration and marketing out, it's
Right.
gonna be.
Right, and then the question to Senator Hinsdale's point or question about marketing this to first-year students that are applying. The question would be: Is this a 2-year pilot? And then you put the money in reserve for those first years, so we won't see the results of that for several years. My hope would be is that obviously we will be. It's not a hope. We would be developing a robust accounting tool to provide reports to the legislature about its success, and would hope to eventually, develop more of a permanent program if it's highly successful, and that will be your determination. That would then allow us to, I think, further integrate this into our admissions packages, or not packages, but at least our marketing side of this. And again, my thinking is that this is also ripe for our internship students who are developing relationships with employers. Employers also become marketeers of this. Oh, did you know that? As an attraction element. But you're all right. So, even if we spent all the money for disbursement to students, it's 500 or 400 and the realistic numbers are 500, but the realistic numbers would be closer to probably 425, 450.
Are you viewing this as an ongoing program? Every year we appropriate 2.5
Well,
million?
I mean, I would, if I, I would say that if it's successful, yeah, I would come back to argue that it should be a regular appropriation. I mean, I think running this as a pilot, if I were in your shoes, I think that would be a perfectly reasonable enterprise to suggest start off.
No means testing here at all. It's just if you commit to a job. And I agree with Senator Rob Hicksdale. I mean, this is why set it up as a forgivable loan if you're giving it out after the 2 years of service.
I agree.
I call it a grant.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why we have in other bills, we have things like reduction in student waiving of credits on student loan interest. Why would we put this money there? At least target people who are in need.
Yeah, there's the means testing piece, I think is one of the things I think you need to talk to VSAC about.
Yeah, I mean, that's another, so then the question becomes, what's the intent of the program? Is it to open up access for broader engagement of recent graduates? And or is it filling and helping to fill workforce needs? And this is where the means
If we could do
testing-
both, if we could do both, it would be great.
Well, I mean, let me share my other bias here, which is when you go to college, if you're high income or you're low income, usually you graduate from college somewhat debt free. You know, if your expected minimum contribution is 0, you graduate and you have the privilege of not owing student debt. The folks who are saddled with high student debt are middle class folks. Hence, often when you're talking about, loan forgiveness, you're starting to get what happens to young people after college is those who experience the greatest amount of financial stress often have huge student debt. So I'm getting confused as to why this isn't tied to, I mean, yes, maybe it's like we're doing a good thing by saying they don't have to pay it. They can use it for whatever they want, but then you are capturing just a huge group of people rather than, let's say, like an EITC where you're helping working people who need a tax break or, have tax liability. This is, in my mind, you would structure it so that you're helping people who have student debt.
Well,
But
it
it
is an
doesn't-
educational loan.
You
So
just said it's not. So now I'm confused.
So it's not educational loans at the moment. It's loans. So it could be loans for a car because students who may be low income and have had a quote unquote free ride to university may have had to buy books, may have had to buy a car, they may have other debts.
So, but they are not helped by forgivable loan that's 6 years in the future.
I don't think we can think about it. I mean, I
I just
really
don't
think
know
this
who
is marketed.
I really think I don't understand who this helps.
This helps people, we're trying to encourage people to stay in Vermont. So this is one more tool. And I mean, there's more work needs to be done. That's why I've asked for this time.
I think in finance,
It,
if the cost of we're about to vote on, and the governor proposes as well, I think we accepted this one, $2.2 million in piggybacking a state loan forgiveness program. We're increasing the amount of loan forgiveness on, not forgiveness, interest forgiveness.
for educational loans.
For educational loans. I just don't understand why we're creating yet another program here, where we're trying to, I think it should be sort of, but I think that interest loan forgiveness is tied to staying in the state.
Yes,
No, I mean.
Oh, the one in finance.
So, I mean, why don't we just take that $2.5 million and add it to that program? Why do we create a new program?
I think that's a question we need to know where all these
And I
monies
think
are.
VSAC does this all the time. Why do we have a middleman here?
That was my question.
Excuse me, I just quickly wanted to touch base with the majority and the minority leader on that S resolution.
I got nobody saying no, so I'm, we're yes.
No,
Great,
I did, some people did say yes, but
okay, perfect, thank you.
Sorry, I included you on that and no one
Yes, I saw you.
responded.
Just wanted to.
Yeah,
Um,
I think we have, why do we have Chris here? So Chris, I think this would benefit from you and VSAC working on it a little more fully so that we're clear on your intent and understand how it fits in with the proposal that's in finance. So can we get that to him? Do you know what bill that's in?
510.
That's in bill, in 510,
$510.
H 510.
Yep.
So if you could look at that and figure out how this complements or is duplicative or whatever. I think we need to answer some of the questions we've raised.
And I'm not sure on 510 whether there is a work requirement for like a year or 2 years.
Yeah.
after.
So I think
Maybe a straight tax deduction.
So I like the fact that this requires you have to have stayed in Vermont for 2 years. I mean, this is really looking at the 60% of kids for whom Vermont is not their home base.
Right.
This is looking at people who are coming to Vermont. I mean, so let's clarify our populations. We're looking at 60% of people who are coming here, who don't live here, and we're trying to keep them here to make a life here and to work here.
Or Senator, the other is to keep the ones that are native Vermonters here to work in.
It doesn't exclude them.
It wouldn't exclude them, no.
It doesn't exclude anybody. It says,
Right.
we want you to stay here, and this is how much we want you to stay here. We're willing to give you basically a grant after, if you stay for 2 years, we're gonna give you a grant. If you have loans, we're gonna give you a grant of $5,000 to help pay them down.
Chris, I have a question. Is this language come at the suggestion of the Office of Engagement or did it come from the legislature?
Stephanie Jerome, I think.
It came from the representatives. Yep.
Came from Stephanie.
Yeah.
Do you have any information? You mentioned a few states that do this. Is there any kind of reports we could see on what percentage of penetration they do of graduates? And if there's any metrics of how successful the program has been?
Senator, I can get that back to you. Yeah, I'm aware that these programs exist. I've seen the websites, but we haven't dug into the metrics. But we can do that and get back to both to the committee.
Thanks, Chris. That would be great.
All right.
Any other questions before we're done? Got anything else?
Is that the only Office of Engagement section?
Yeah.
That's it. Oh, is there anything else from UVM that's in this bill?
Well, there is in the back end of the bill, I think, around the nursing supports.
Oh, right.
I'm not prepared to go in great depth, but I do know in chatting with our provost actually yesterday, we're very supportive, obviously, and fully engaged in those programming and program development. We appreciate that. And my message, I guess, around this bill is encouragement. Any opportunities we have to encourage the connectivity and coordination among all the service provider communities around our workforce needs is a net benefit. So we do appreciate the spirit of H703. And our interest in supporting this particular program is because of its ability to deepen our ties with our other higher ed institutions and VSAC around workforce development needs and securing and ensuring our students stay here. So just the spirit behind this bill is much appreciated.
So just to underscore, we need to figure about how much you think it would cost to administer.
And marketing and the marketing, the costs that are not going to students.
Yeah, we recognize that. We have had some tentative conversations. There's that administrative percentage that we have been bouncing around, but we'll clarify that for you and recognize what you would get for that.
Right, and I think the last question
Your phone is making a huge note.
oh, how tiresome. Oh, it must be because we're recording this.
Oh, are you needing to report this?
No, I don't know how to undo it. Get rid of that. I have no idea. Anyway, I don't know how to operate my phone.
Thank you, Chris, very
I
much.
think, Chris, this is great, and
Okay, thank you.
the other thing that would be great to add is that it's a pilot.
Yes.
2 year with a report back, maybe in January of 25. I mean, it gives it 2 years to.
Well, then you're committing probably another $2.5 million.
Well, you've got to do 2 years here.
If you want it to be 2 years, we could say that, then it's going to be 225 credits a year.
Anyway, a pilot, you guys think about how you want to present.
Yeah, I mean, we could pilot this for 1 year that would last for over 2 years, that would give you the metrics. You know, it would be a shot, a surge. We could be extending it over 2 years' time, as the senator was saying. But we'll lay out those options for you, and you can weigh in and decide. Okay.
Thank you again.
Thank you for your time. Take care.
Senator Fletcher, you want to go to Matt?
I have, no, I'm trying to stop.
Okay, Matt, welcome. How are you?
Hi, Matt.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me.
I think that Senator Clarkson probably invited you, but I don't know on what section.
You have a data section. I don't think we actually fully heard from you before. Is that correct? That was my memory. On the DOL, on section 5 and 6, maybe?
There's
703.
In 703, yeah, and I'm sorry, I hadn't realized I was in charge of the witnesses, so I feel like
page 49, maybe.
yeah, I think we were on the, hold on, let me just look at, I want to say it was here. Yes, maybe page 49. I'm just looking at the data. There was a
On
very
page
specific.
10, it says the department should develop labor market information reports to support discussion and decision making that will address local labor market challenges.
Yeah, that, I knew there was a piece in this section of 5. That is. Yes, so that's at the top of page 10 in section 5, it's B, which is under D. So it's B under little d on page 10. And then I think there's another, anyway, I knew we needed to see you, Matt, because we always benefit from seeing you.
Well, thank you. I'll say for the record, I'm Matthew Berwicz, Director of the Economic and Labor Market Information Division with the Vermont Department of Labor. Happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
I think that there are 2 here, and there's also in section 11, this work-based learning, earning and training program, which is, I can't remember if that's AOE, DOL, it's the work-based learning and training program. The Department of Labor shall develop the statewide work-based, and it has a whole data section that I had a question for you to talk about, which is in section 10. Oh, sorry, section 11. So why don't we first chat about section 5, the labor market information, which my guess is you mostly have. But anyway, if you could chat with us about that, which would any additional information or additional work you'd have to do on that?
Sure. This initiative is primarily led by our Workforce Development Division, but our division, the Economic and Labor Market Information Division, works very closely with them. And so they've been sure to just include mention that we would be supporting on the back end, compiling data and answering any sort of technical questions about the information. And as necessary, compiling and releasing information that would help these regional conversations.
So there's nothing new for you there. I mean, that's just additional coordination with your workforce division.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, can I just,
yeah.
So I feel like if we take a really big step back around this whole bill, we are better served if we're having conversations with you, Matt, about where the greatest bottlenecks are in terms of demographics that have a hard time with employment and, barriers to employment that you hear reported most often. It feels a little it's not cart before the horse because we know we have a workforce problem almost everywhere, but eventually it feels like there's a bigger role to play with being able to inform the legislature. These are the areas where we're having trouble employing a certain demographic or geography or, you know, where there's the greatest need for this type of job, where people are having childcare issues or whatever. I mean, do you feel like in an ongoing way, there's a systemic way that is bolstered by this section that you were able to share with us the needed data to make better workforce investments overall?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And the spirit of it is really what I'm trying to grapple with, because right now where we're at in the economy, a lot of times economists, we can kind of just assume for the sake of discussion purposes that our economy is in a state of equilibrium, right? Well, we know right now it's not a very good time to make that assumption. There's so much in flux right now. And so a lot of the data that we compile, whether it's you know, at the state level or sometimes even at the county level, we know that there's still a lot of kinks in the economic system that are working its way out. And so I think to Senator Hinsdale's point, you know, right now when you read the metrics, the whole dashboard lights up as red, right? Labor force issues needed across the state, across the industries. And I'm happy to kind of talk through the theoretical about, you know, what it means, but, you know, there can be a point where public policy has to weigh in on this as a discussion of, you know, there's some traditional theories of economic development and which industries should have priority and which ones we'd want to support because those are more income generating or bringing new wealth to the state. So you think about export industries. Or conversely, do you say, you know what, we have more of a humanitarian crisis right now, and we need to think more on the equity side as it relates to childcare and, you know, taking a deeper dive there. But for me right now, because it is not a state of true equilibrium where I can get like decipher the colors of red, to continue that analogy, everything kind of looks like a workforce need to me right now. And it's difficult for me as an individual to assess or opine, you know, proportionally, relatively, who is in greatest need. So I know that's not a great answer, but I'm happy to kind of hear follow-up questions that might be able to kind of stimulate my thoughts on this a bit more.
No, that's helpful. So if section 5 is not a problem for you, if you could just shift to section 11, because we only have 10 minutes left.
I guess like my bigger question though is like, is it different to say it's not a problem or it actually helps?
Data collection.
Will this particular, the way this data collection is worded, will this help us know and understand coming out of a recession and an economic downturn such as this? Is this giving us the information that we need to make better decisions?
That is a Matt question, which is, Matt, will this give us better data to make better decisions?
That is always the goal of my division, whether I have you know, a directive of a legislation or not. Like that is like the true passion and what I try and focus our division around. And you know, if there is a mechanism in which we can ensure, you know, either regional legislative participation from elected officials and do one region at a time and make sure those conversations are hitting all the high buttons, I'm sure our workforce development division, as well as our labor market information division, would be more than happy to receive that and make that a collaborative issue, because we certainly don't want to get to the end of whatever regional analyses are done across the state and they say, well, this doesn't help anyone really, does it? So I do think there has to be an iterative process. I think there has to be multiple voices from multiple stakeholders to ensure that all voices are being heard from, including the ones not at the table, which are the ones that always concern me the most.
So you already do an analysis of data regionally and locally. I mean, you're already capable of doing this.
Correct. We do produce a lot of data at that sub-state regional level, depending on the breakout. We look at a lot of times at labor market areas because we find them more meaningful, because it identifies where people live, work, and shop, kind of commuting patterns. It's a little bit more meaningful than county level data. In other parts of the country, county level data is really important, but in Vermont, because we traverse so many county boundaries on a daily basis, it seems a little less meaningful here. But I think it was coming out of the last recession, 2011, 2012, we did a lot of regional outlook. So we kind of have done this before in certain regards and partnered with like the RDCs and the regional development corporations in the local communities. And to my knowledge, what got back to my ears is those were really successful and really appreciated because it brought a lot of voices out into the community, and then in turn brought the community's voices back into those conversations.
Right. And I just want to say, I think many of us were here, but I remember it really struck me coming out of the recession when I believe you shared a chart that showed that while it looked like overall the state had begun an upswing in recovery, it was only Chittenden County where incomes were at pre-recession levels. Every other county was below pre-recession levels. That kind of data is really helpful and critical, and I just want to, I think it's embedded in here, but I just want to make sure we're highlighting things like that, geographies. We know that women and people in service sectors, have struggled more. So how do we inform policy through that, I guess? And I hope this is written in such a way that it does.
I think in many ways you're already doing the work that's identified here in this paragraph.
Right.
And it's just a question of the lens you go at it, pulling up on any given day. And the question you're asked, you could go into your data and find the answers at the moment, I think, to this paragraph. But the section 11, the little d data question under C, activities.
Can you give a page number?
Yeah, it is. I actually just had it, and now I
17.
think it's page. Yeah, it's page 19. Under the data section. So this is the department doing, continuing to work their, would you just be kind enough to chat with us? This is, I remember Sarah saying this is the revamping of internships, apprenticeships. Is that right, Amanda? Okay, this is their reworking a lot of the core programs that the DOL does. And can you just talk to us, Matt, about the data requirement here, what's expected? And is any of this stuff you wouldn't normally collect? I mean, it strikes me as is pretty straightforward.
I'm not as familiar with this section, nor am I as familiar with what workforce development's plans are on this. And so you mentioned page 19. I'm not, which?
This is page 19 of H703.
Yeah.
And it says, it's under the section of C, activities. The department may use funds appropriated to it for the program to do all these different things. And then one of them is, and then it goes to data, and it says the department shall collect the following data. Total number of participants involved in all these programs. I mean, my guess is you're doing this already. The number of participants who receive wage assistance, the average wage of participants, the number of work-based learning and training opportunities, the number of employers engaged, and state participation.
Yep. Yeah, and there's sorry.
Yeah, no, it strikes me you're already doing this. I just wanted you to weigh in on it.
And there's two ways that we have, my division has participated with this in the past. And so I'm not sure what workforce development's plan is for this one. There's certain programs, like if you think about the Vermont training program and what was formerly known as the WET fund, the Workforce Education Training Fund that the Vermont Department of Labor administered. My division would do an annual analysis and submit a report to both the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and Vermont Training Program, and then the Vermont Department of Labor, the WET Fund, and those would be part of annual reports that be submitted to you. And we do partner with our Workforce Development Division to do things like that. However, that said, the Workforce Development Division does have like a data administrator that they report required federal programming. And so anything that's required by our federal partners to mandatorily report. So it's possible they might just do this through their own internal workings as opposed to use us. But either way would be fine. I can comment just specifically that the Department of Labor has brought in somebody to oversee the internship program. So we're really excited about a new hire in that and kind of re-energizing that. And I know that my division is already on the short list to partner with that individual to ensure that we can revamp the apprenticeship specifically data programs and data systems so that we can better track for Vermont's purposes, not just federal, but for Vermont purposes, the outcomes of those programs. So apprenticeships specifically is on my to-do list. And here I do see expansion of discussion in internships, returnships, and the like. But I have not coordinated with Director Buxton at the Department of Labor to see what her grand vision is for this reporting.
Right, got it. Well, then maybe this testimony is premature. Yeah,
I just want to say, I mean, I just don't think there's anywhere we should be asking for new data that we don't say that we need the demographic information of the participants.
Fair point, because if we don't have it, if it's not provided through the data intake process, Department of Labor has very little of that, as you're well aware of.
great, let's add it. Yep. Thanks. So Matt, if you check with Sarah and Jay and find out
Sure.
if there's anything we need to know additionally in these sections or anything we need to improve them other than collecting demographics. Because we've bumped into that problem so many times. That would be great.
No problem.
Nothing else jumps out at you?
Throughout this, the entire bill,
Yep.
I guess what I was kind of gearing up for, and I don't want to step in it if I don't need to, but towards the back half, there is discussion about Vermont Department of Labor's role in the healthcare data hub, I believe.
Yes, sorry, a good catch. Yep.
And so that's been a conversation. Oh, sorry.
Do you know what section that's in? Remind me. Amanda knows.
32
Section 32. Oh my God, thank God Amanda's around.
on page 49.
Page 49, section 32. Thank you.
And so this is a conversation that's kind of had some stops and starts throughout the session, and it's a big discussion. And so I didn't know if you had any specific questions about it. I think as worked right now, it would be the Agency of Human Services that would be in charge of the Workforce Data Center. What I've learned in my decade plus in state government, specifically related to healthcare workforce data, is there's a lot of it out there, but each division or each entity that tracks it has their own definitions, and not just even for the occupations, but also the industries and also the regions. And it's not by it is not to be problematic. Each one has their own requirements because of the programs that they administer and the funding that they're trying to make performance with. So there's a lot of information out there, and some of the biggest challenges is actually definitional, more so than anything else.
So you're envisioned to be coordinating. It says, my one note here is there is no.
One second.
Yeah.
So the way things are going here, we're just going to introduce this amendment on SALT, the two of us, but are you supportive of it?
Yeah, but I mean, what's happening with the Brown? We didn't vote on that one either.
No, we did. I said, is everybody okay with that?
Okay, right. Sorry, Matt.
No problem.
Matt, I think we're losing people. So I guess my question to you here is, there is no consolidation of data here in this. And you're right, there's lots of healthcare data. What do we do? What do we do to make this a better section and a better coordinated data section?
I think it's been improved from what I've seen in the past. So they are going to work through it, and it does seem like it's more of an exercise of kind of streaming it out. So it says shall expand its data collection practices, and maybe that should be, expand its data collection or data organization practices. It's through the collection of the data, the organization will naturally occur. So I think it is just kind of it's the first foray into try and get things into alignment.
So if you'd be kind enough to send language that would, because you're mentioned here with the Workforce Data Center, which I assume I mean, I don't know who runs the workforce data center? Is there such a thing?
I think that's what this creates and puts it with Agency of Human Services, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, but it sadly doesn't put it in your operation.
Yeah, this is a very big undertaking. And I think earlier conversations when we started pricing it out, I'm a small shop with a budget of just over $1 million of sorts. And like the pricing about the initial work that was being quoted out in here was already getting into the multiple of millions. And, the capacity for me to double my staff in a short period of time to do the work seemed unfeasible. So at least as a starting point of having an Agency of Human Services start the work with the infrastructure they have in place and the knowledge they have in place, I think then some recommendations at their lead can come out of it to better to tackle this issue.
Okay.
Because I don't have too much more to say on it, just because it has gone through so many discussions. I think, as I said, it's an improvement from where it's been.
But this is a huge coordination effort between AHS, you, the Office of Healthcare Reform, and Green Mountain Care Board.
Yep.
And, okay, well, if you have any language you would suggest adding, I'd appreciate getting it from you.
Okay. I can certainly work with Amanda on that, and obviously want to consult with the commissioner, see what his thoughts are about this particular section.
Yeah, and Sarah too.
Yes, of course.
Great, thank you very much. More to follow.
Thank you.
Great seeing everyone. Thank you.
Good to see you too.
Okay. We can go offline.
You want to talk to Abby before we do? Or no?
Oh, Abby, yes.
Abby.
Sorry, I didn't see you come up. Hi, Abby.
There's just us chickens left, Abby.
We don't have a quorum, so I think probably we should go offline.